Hi, this is Scott Garibay, and today I want to talk about Dungeons and Dragons, and I want to talk about being a dungeon master and creating the perfect story for the perfect audience. Now, we are incredibly blessed. We do have the perfect audience. We so like we're going to talk about filmmaking today, but I want to explain, right? We're dungeon masters. We are literally telling stories for the most charismatic, confident, intelligent people in the world. And the reason more why, in my humble opinion, is because that's what Gary built a filter for. First of all, regular Dungeons and Dragons right now, the ante is 800 pages of reading. You can't run Dungeons and Dragons without reading 800 pages of content, right? And I'm not talking you bought an essentials kit and you ran one story, and then everybody piddled off in their different directions. I'm talking real Dungeons and Dragons, right? The ante is 800 pages of reading. That guarantees the most charismatic, confident, intelligent people in the world are coming to it, because you cannot successfully dungeon master if you're not charismatic. You're not going to read 800 pages of content about rules if you're not intelligent, and you cannot embody different identities if you're not confident, and you can't keep people at the table if you're not charismatic. Okay, we need to build the best stories in the world. It's extremely difficult to do. How do we do it? We go to people who understand story at a high level. And I'm going to point you to Patrick Willem. So I am a huge film buff, right? And that has been an incredibly blessed. I'm an evangelical Christian. I'm incredibly blessed by God. He put me on this planet to see cinema. One of the reasons to see cinema at its peak, right? And not only am I seeing incredible films, but I'm getting the best commentary for those films before and after the film. Right? So I'm not experiencing films like most people. I'm experiencing films in a dramatically better way, right? And the reason why is Gary demanded it. He demanded something from Dungeon Masters that is not simply not demanded from normal human beings, right? We are hyperhuman people who play Dungeons and Dragons, who run Dungeons and Dragons, right? People who do Dungeons and Dragons, dungeon masters and dungeon performers. That's people who run a player character at a Dungeons and Dragons table, are hyperhuman, right? And we interact differently. So in order to get there, we have to understand. I think one of the best ways, the fastest ways, the way with the best ROI for your time, right, is understanding film. Right now, I understand, right? Okay, filmmakers are not dungeon masters. What they do is fundamentally less important than what any the bog standard done. Like, what Martin Scorsese did this year was less important than what the most bog standard dungeon master did at a kitchen table this year, right? I want to make that clear. I understand that, but the reality is, as far as there is no analog for what the dungeon master does today. There's no analog. It's not done anywhere else in the world, right? The type of narratives we tell, the way we explore identity, the way we're building a platform for achievement, right? Learning, growing, fixing, answering, right? Is astounding. It's really, and it's unprecedented and unequaled anywhere else. But the closest analog is filmmakers, right? So one of the best film commentary people on the planet right now is Patrick Willem. He is an absolutely brilliant genius, and he has broken down film into understanding film in the last 50 years in distinct, useful language. And I want to explore that with you, and then I want to take away what every dungeon master has to learn from what Patrick Willem perfectly communicated about American film in the 1970s. All right, so let's go. So what was the 1970s in American film? Patrick Willem describes this era of film as the era of the dark auteur, where every single thing was lamented, where sadness marinated every topic. You're like, wait a second, Scott. Are so many movies like that? Yes, they are. Iconically. I'll give you the three. Right? And again, this is from Patrick Willem. Um, One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. Incredibly sad. A deep lament, right, of the human state. Then Chinatown. A deep lament of the human state. And it's literally about water rights, right? Just horribly sad, right? And last, Taxi Driver, just the deepest lament of the human state, right? And Jodie Foster and Robert De Niro, just a horrible lament of the human state, right? So the 70s, what do dungeon masters learn from Patrick Williams' brilliant reduction of 70s film to the era of the Dark Auteur? Avoid it. We do not lament everything. The 70s era snapped shut and did not last beyond the 70s, right? And Americans were like, for the love of goodness, give us a movie that is not a sad, whining lament, right? So, you as a dungeon master, understand American film. 70s was one of the worst decades of cinema ever. It was the era of the Dark Auteur. Do not be a Dark Auteur dungeon master. Make sure you bring joy in every single session, right? And reject the American concept of the Dark Auteur. Every single word you just heard is my humble opinion. What's important is when I get to hear your humble opinion, when you get in the comments and send your traffic. Please consider subscribing, and have a wonderful millennium.